Hello and welcome back to the podcast. It's me solo today because we're going to be talking about how LinkedIn has changed in the last 5 years and what it means for you. If you're using LinkedIn to build your brand, to get clients, to generate leads, and maybe you're thinking about doing it, I'm going to walk through some of the ways the platform has changed over the last 5 years so that you have the home field advantage. Look, if you've been on LinkedIn for a while, you may have noticed the changes, but some of you may have been going through and doing the same old thing over and over and over again and wondering why it used to work and now it no longer does. Well, in this episode, I'm going to walk through some of the things that I think are the biggest changes and how you adapt to them and make the platform successful for you. So what I thought I'd do is I'd categorize a few areas and go how it worked in 2020 versus how it works in 2025, and then you can see the difference. So look, let's start with the biggie, organic reach. Organic reach on LinkedIn by far is the best, most democratic reach platform there is. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you go on TikTok, if you go on Instagram, other people have an unfair advantage. LinkedIn has always been, it's easier for everyday users to get reach and visibility on the platform. And today, it is the same. Now, back in 2020, the organic reach was absolutely insane. It was incredible how much traction you could get. And you could share almost anything and it would work. So I would share a mix of quotes, things that were going on in my day, blogs and articles, even external links, and that would be fantastic. Now, in 2025, it's way more competitive, and the algorithms seem to favor people who get sustained traction more. So it feels like more organic reach goes to fewer people. But still, even in 2025, where is there a place where you can easily get 500 people paying attention to you on a daily basis? There really isn't a space like that. So whilst we grieve the reach that we could get in 2020, it's still a massive opportunity. And what tends to get high reach more now than ever is more motivational content, more provocative content. And the algorithms seem to favor more sustained engagement over a period. Whereas back 5 years ago, it was just anything that got engagement would just blow up. So LinkedIn is still a great platform for sharing content and getting your message out. But you have to really think about who am I trying to reach? Otherwise, you can struggle trying to get reach for the wrong reasons. And a lot of people do this on LinkedIn. So what tips would I give you for organic reach? Number one, focus on the content that your target audience would be interested in, not the things that you're interested in sharing necessarily, but the things that will be of interest to your target audience. That may or may not be on your topic, so have a look and do the research. And also focus on improving your visuals. A lot of people obsess about what they're writing in their content and miss the fact that the first job they've got to do is stop the scroll. People are scrolling at 1.5 inches, I think, a second. It's a crazy speed. And so you have to think about how am I going to stop people and get people's attention to this post? You know, it used to be 2020, just a really good picture would catch people's eye. Now you have to be really smart in thinking, how am I going to stop people scrolling past and who do I not want to scroll past? So you can focus that energy onto the asset that grabs the right people's attention. So organic reach is definitely harder, but it's not impossible. But it becomes down to you really understanding who you're trying to reach and what they're paying attention to. If you don't do that, you're just stabbing in the dark. Okay, lead generation. So LinkedIn has always been a great lead gen platform. I love it for that. It still is in 2025, but it is a little bit different. So you could get inbound leads relatively easy posting back and sharing stuff back in 2020. You just had to show up and be consistent. And you hear that phrase bandied around on social media, just be consistent. And there's truth to that. Just being consistent in 2020 would work. In 2025, just being consistent is not enough. You need to be consistently strategic. You've got to think about who do you want to get attention? What's their pain points? You have to talk to people at the point of where they're ready to flip and, at the end of their buying cycle. Because we're all saturated, you just look at your own life. We've got emails coming in, ads coming in, DMs coming in. We just pay that less attention. So we have to do a lot more and have a more focused process to take somebody from this person doesn't know me to this person wants business from me. You have to have a system. And I think back in 2020, you didn't really need much of a system. You could just have a go. Because the platform was almost half the size it is today, you could just have a go and it would work out. Now, with 1 billion plus users, it's saturated, it's busy. You need that plan. People don't just flip into leads quickly. You have to have that. How am I going to take somebody from they don't know me to they're making inquiry? And that's content, that's touch points, that's a lot of different activities. So you have to have a plan in 2025 to make LinkedIn work. 2020, you could just show up and have a go, and the ROI of having a go would be clear. Now, if you show up in 2025 and have a go, you'll fail. And then you'll go, the platform doesn't work. So you've got to have a plan, a strategy, a target audience, a clear message, a clear offer. All of that stuff matters if you want to get leads from the platform and you want high quality leads. You know, I can put out posts that bait people into, here's how to make 10K in your next 30 days. And that will get a ton of leads, but a lot of them aren't serious. So they don't convert. What they do is they're like dreamers. They like the outcome, but they're not really serious about buying. And that could be a real clog in the system if you're flooded with leads that have no intention of buying. So that's where you need that system and process, and you have to work it, not play at it. Okay. Now, I'll tell you a little story. Pre-2020, one of the things I used to do, because this is before, Zoom, we all lived our lives on Zoom calls. One of the things I used to do was set up appointments and go and see people. So I'd schedule a couple of days to go to London, and then I'd, plan it out. So 4 weeks before, I'd be growing my network, engaging with people, and then say, hey, I'm coming down to London to this area. I'd love to grab a coffee. And I would line up, 10 or so meetings over a couple of days, and it worked brilliantly. Today, because people are bombarded with outreach on all channels, because, and you know this, you're getting them too, irrelevant outreach as well. I've had, somebody asked me about, wanting to go on a mentorship for the menopause the other day on LinkedIn. I'm like, what the hell? I've had LinkedIn trainers outreach to me offering their LinkedIn services. There's so much poor targeting that even when you're targeted, you're still competing with the irrelevant outreach. People are getting switching off. And so today, it's ever so important that you think about outreach in the context of what you've done before you sent that DM. So I say this to people all the time, and it's true. People will respond or at least open your outreach messages if they recognize your name or your face. And I see a lot of salespeople, a lot of business owners firing out pitches thinking that surely if I just speak to more people, I'll get more responses. And it's not true. People generally pay attention to things that strike a chord with them. And one of the ways you can use LinkedIn is to just build that familiarity so that when you outreach, they recognize the name, they recognize the face, and they're way more likely to engage with you. They're way more likely to actually look at the message. And if they look at the message, that in itself means you get more responses because you're getting more people seeing the message. So in 2025, cold outreach has always been difficult, right? But it's more difficult now because more people are doing it. And so if you want any success from outreach, you have to think about, what am I doing to build up familiarity with those prospects so that when that message lands, they go and they get the notification or they see your name in the inbox or whatever, that they go, let's have a look at this. The name's familiar. Do I know this person? I seem to know this person from somewhere. And it's a massive advantage that most people are not really thinking about, but it's huge. It's a huge advantage if people recognize your name or your face. Okay, let's think about followers. So back in 2020, amassing followers was a thing to do. And people who had big followings, you gave them respect because they're thought leaders, successful business people. You wanted to pay attention to them for their unique insights. I wish that was the same today in 2025. Today, you can buy bot followers. In 30 minutes, you can have 10,000 followers, 100,000 followers. You can get 200 likes on every post from bots. So there is a lot of smoke and mirrors. And the sad part about the smoke and mirrors in 2025 is they actually work. It's called the bandwagon effect. And so a lot of creators and influencers are going, well, hang on a minute. If I get 100,000 followers and I get, 200 bots to engage with my post in the first 30 minutes, I'm going to naturally attract an organic audience. And I'd love to say it isn't true. I'd love to say that it doesn't work, but it does. It really does. But there's some hope here about this. First off, number one, whilst doing that kind of game works and the extremes of their game works, the power of a follower in terms of helping you reach more of the platform is waning. So in 2020, you could literally post, you'd gain followers, and those followers were more likely to see your content. In 2025, the algorithm is not following the follower signal as a means to distribute content. So in other words, if you have 100,000 followers, it doesn't give you as big as an advantage with your content as it used to. So somebody with 100,000 followers could put out content and a good chunk of those people would have the odds of seeing them if they logged in, seeing that post. Now that's not the case. If you think about how social media used to work, right? It had very simple algorithms. Now they have AI. A simple algorithm, and think about it, the reason why we have the follower button is so that the algorithm can basically use that as a signal to say you want more content from that person. So I'll give you more content from that person. Now the algorithms have AI in them. So literally the AI can look at what's Dean engaging with on the platform. Let's show more of the stuff that Dean likes. And so AI is doing a better job at getting content to us that we actually like and value. The follower count isn't as useful. Now you might think, oh, what's the point then? No. This is a great opportunity. It's the democratization of content. And right now you might not feel like it, but what it's meaning is everybody has a more level playing field. And so the algorithm, will distribute the content based on who it's interesting to, based on its own calculations. It's more about every piece of content, and that's a good thing. I've got a YouTube account. This is a really good example. I've got a YouTube account with 6,000 followers. So you go, wow, Dean, 6,000 followers. Every video I do struggles to get off the ground. Yet I have a YouTube account with 10 followers and I get 20,000 impressions in a week. How does that work? Well, it shows you that all platforms are going down the route of who is this content the best who's it for? And trying to match their users with the content rather than who you're following. If I go off topic and start talking about something random, don't you think the algorithm will distribute the content differently? Of course they would. But in the old world, 2020, if you followed somebody, you'd get everything they did until eventually you'd unfollow them because it was irrelevant content. Now, the algorithm just goes, Dean likes this, I'll show him this. Dean likes this. And this is happening on every platform. It's the democratization of reach, but the follower count does not mean as much as it used to. Sure, if you've got 1 million followers, you have an advantage, but that advantage isn't as juicy or as lucrative as it used to be. And for you who don't have 1 million followers or even 10,000 followers, it means every piece of content stands on its own. So you're no longer limited to the barriers of more followers equals more reach. You can actually go, if this piece of content gets out there and people like it, engage with it, it creates discussion, they stay on it, they spend time on the post, it will go further. So you're not capped by a follower count anymore. Authenticity. Right. 2020. In 2020, LinkedIn was a very different platform, let's be honest, right? It was a very different platform. And people would be less open to sharing their personal thoughts and their personal lives on LinkedIn. That is true. And some people would say 2025 LinkedIn is a bit more like Facebook. That's kind of true in that LinkedIn has embraced becoming a social platform for B2B almost. So LinkedIn has a niche. It's a business social media platform. But let's be honest, when we're talking to our clients, customers, and suppliers, we're not just business machines. And so LinkedIn has embraced the fact that you can be more of yourself and more expressive on the platform. And that's paid off massively for LinkedIn because more people are using it on a regular basis. But back in 2020, the kind of humble brag, look at me content was less common. The thirst traps that you see on social media, as particularly on LinkedIn now, were not as prevalent. And for those of you who don't know what thirst traps are, it is very attractive people using their appearance. I struggled to say that right then because I didn't want to get in trouble. Using their appearance to grab people's attention in the feed. So that could be revealing clothing. That could be poses in particular ways. And look, before I dig myself a hole here, people can do what they like on their LinkedIn. People can do what they like. My argument about that kind of humble bragging is, and even the thirst traps, is the people who are using that know what they're doing. So I have an issue with them saying they're a thought leader when they use their appearance, and trying to be as diplomatic, to actually get attention, and then also follow up with posts complaining about that same attention. Now, nobody has a right to be, all those kind of horrible things that happen to people on the platforms. But my point is, that was a small amount of the platform. I look on the platform right now in 2025, and a percentage of the content in, let's just go back to the 90s, would probably be porn. In the 90s. Yeah, it's not anymore. We've moved on a little bit. We're a bit more liberal than we used to be. But a lot of it is soft porn. I'm not going into that because I don't want to dig myself a hole and somebody will find a reason to have a pop at me over it. But let's just say a lot of the content in 2020 was people just sharing what they thought. It was less performative. Today, there is a lot of performative content. There's a lot of baiting. There's a lot of clickbait. There's a lot of sensationalism. And there's a ton of AI content flooding the platform. And I'm pretty sure LinkedIn's wising up to how this works. But I still feel, and this is kind of something I feel very strongly about, is that when the world starts to zig, if you want to stand out, you have to zag. And what I mean by that is, as people are going more slick, because AI is making everything slicker, as the content becomes more performative and you see people, photo shoots pretending to be ordinary life, I think people are going to crave for real authenticity, not this kind of perfect show home lifestyle. Everything that you see on social media is staged. Photo shoots, everything you do is stage perfect. You'll never find clutter. You'll never find any reality. And I think the advantage for you in terms of being authentic on the platform, I hate the word authentic, to be honest with you. I hate it because I've seen it so many times about just be your authentic self with photo shoots, or people saying that, they're on holiday, but they've took a load of, catalog photos and then saying just be your authentic self. The authentic self is you in the moment, the 80% of you in real life. And I think people are going to crave for that. And I think the opportunity on LinkedIn is for you to be yourself. So don't think you have to rise to the performingness of the platform. You can be yourself. And in fact, in an age of AI, one of the advantages of being in an age of AI where everybody's obsessed with AI is the differentiator is being human. I'm not saying we ignore AI. I'm not saying we don't use it. I love AI. I use it every day. But actually showing up as yourself is your power, not showing up as the catalog version of you, the brochure version of you, actually being yourself. So 2020 was very much more human, but more reserved, I would argue. Today, it's far more liberal. You can share more personal stuff, which I think is a good thing. There is a performative edge to it at the moment, but I think actually the advantage for most people is not playing into the performative edge, because there'll always be somebody to outperform you. There'll always be somebody who can create graphics better, edit better, create better videos, all that stuff. But you are the biggest asset. Are people connecting with you and having a connection with you is your biggest asset. And so whilst you feel the pressure, and I do it too, I feel the pressure to do slicker stuff and better stuff. Actually, I want people to connect with me. How am I going to build a business? By people connecting with me. And I guess this is the lesson of LinkedIn in 2025. You want to set up your stall on LinkedIn so it's very clear who you are, what you're about, who you're for, and let people get to know you. Let people learn to trust you. So that when you outreach, when you invite them to take the next step onto your services or your programs or whatever you do, people want to work with you. That is the key here, and building that high intent audience. So yes, LinkedIn in some ways since 2020 has become more difficult, but in some ways it's become a bigger opportunity. The liberalization of the platform from what was a bit stuffy, let's be honest, actually allows you to be more expressive of who you really are. And over the last 5 years, I think that's one of the wins of where we've come to, is that we are allowed to be more expressive. We don't all conform into neat little boxes, and actually we're sick of neat little boxes. So be yourself on the platform. More importantly, know why you're there, who you're there for, and what you're going to do. No amount of making it up as you go along in 2025 will substitute a plan and a process that you're going to work on the platform.